Let's just dive right into this explainer. You know the geopolitical map of the world we live in right now? It was fundamentally shaped by one man's almost Shakespearean tragic arc. We're talking about a leader whose genuine, heartfelt attempts to save his empire ended up accidentally destroying the whole thing. Today, we are unpacking the life of Mikhail Gorbachev and the dramatic, sudden fall of the Soviet Union.
We're going to start right in the thick of it at the dramatic climax. Picture this. It's December 25th, 1991, Christmas Day. Mikhail Gorbachev steps up to a podium, resigns, and just like that, the mighty Soviet Union officially ceases to exist. Poof! Almost overnight, the entire world map is completely redrawn.
Section 1. The End of an Empire.
Section 2. Rise of a Reformer. So to understand how this massive superpower unraveled so quickly, we have to look at the man at the absolute center of the storm. Born into a really poor farming family, Gorbachev somehow survived Stalin's brutal famines. He made it through World War II, and he eventually brought a desperately needed pragmatic perspective to Moscow. See, the Soviet old guard was literally dying off in rapid succession. Brezhnev and Andropov, then Chernobyl, all gone between 1982 and 1985. The system was totally stagnant, governed by this extremely elderly cohort. Enter Gorbachev in 1985, taking the absolute top job at just 54 years old.
Section 3. Restructuring and Openness. Now, Gorbachev's master blueprint for change basically rested on two incredibly consequential words. The first one you've probably heard, Perestroika, which translates to restructuring. The Soviet economy was flatlining, suffocating under extreme bureaucracy. Think about a massive system with virtually zero innovation. So, to survive, Gorbachev makes this incredibly ironic move for a Soviet communist leader. He injects a small dose of free market capitalism. For the first time in over 60 years, limited private ownership was actually allowed.
But you realized economic freedom kind of needed to be paired with social freedom. So the second big word is Glasnost, meaning openness or transparency. This was meant to finally end the suffocating authoritarian secrecy of the past. It allowed for a freer media and actually encouraged everyday citizens to speak up. But, as we're going to see, giving people a voice ultimately encouraged them to completely question the very foundation of the society they were living in.
The really crucial takeaway here is that Gorbachev was absolutely not trying to destroy the communist state. Not at all. He merely wanted to bridge that massive gap between a rigid, authoritarian command economy and Western economic dynamism. His goal was to fix the machine, oil the gears, definitely not tear the whole thing down.
Section 4. Thawing the Cold War.
While he's navigating all these massive domestic shifts, Gorbachev absolutely shocked the West with a revolutionary new approach to foreign policy. The American diplomat Kenneth Adelman actually noted Mikhail was a fundamentally different type of Soviet leader. Right after his initial 1985 Geneva summit with U.S. President Ronald Reagan, American diplomats immediately realized they were dealing with a highly pragmatic negotiator, not some rigid ideologue. Despite having vastly different worldviews, both of these leaders recognized their nations had far, far more to gain by diffusing the Cold War than by escalating it.
And he didn't just talk the talk. Gorbachev actively dismantled the hottest elements of the Cold War at a frankly staggering pace. The 1987 treaty actually banned thousands of nuclear missiles. Then he made the incredibly tough, deeply unpopular call to fully withdraw Soviet troops from the unwinnable war in Afghanistan by 1989. Oh, and he also signed the 1990 Chemical Weapons Accord. Huge moves.
Section 5. The Soviet Collapse. But remember that tragic hero arc we talked about earlier? Well, Gorbachev's genuine attempts to open up the system rapidly snowballed into a cascade of uncontrollable crises. The ultimate turning point arrived on April 26, 1986, with the catastrophic Chernobyl nuclear explosion. The initial Soviet instinct was just to fall back on their usual strict secrecy, which in this case proved literally deadly. That disaster permanently shattered whatever public faith was left in Soviet competence, and it absolutely supercharged the public's demand for true Glasnost. People were furious. They demanded the truth.
And once that demand for truth spread, it just could not be stopped. It spread like wildfire. By the summer of 1988, Gorbachev basically signaled that Soviet tanks were no longer going to roll in and crush Eastern European uprisings like they used to. Once that threat of force evaporated, the dominoes fell at breathtaking speed. You had the Pan-European picnic in August 1989, which led directly to the fall of the Berlin Wall by November. By October 1990, Germany was completely reunified, and Gorbachev just let it all happen peacefully.
Back home, though, Gorbachev was caught in a lethal political vice. Communist hardliners thought he was reforming way too much. Meanwhile, progressives thought he wasn't reforming nearly fast enough. So, in August 1991, the hardliners staged a desperate coup. It failed, largely because figures like Boris Yeltsin famously rallied the opposition. But Yeltsin entirely seized the momentum from that victory. By December 1991, the Belovezha Accords were officially signed, the USSR was dismantled, and Gorbachev was forced to step down.
Section 6. A complicated legacy. Following his resignation, Gorbachev basically had to step back and just watch, and instead of his grand vision for slow, gradual reform, the 1990s descended into absolute chaos. Russia underwent this massive shock therapy. We're talking hyper-privatization of state assets and absolutely devastating hyperinflation. This impoverished millions of ordinary Russians practically overnight, while simultaneously enriching a tiny, select few. And that's exactly what birthed the powerful Russian oligarchs we still see dominating global headlines today.
It really leaves Gorbachev with one of the most highly polarizing legacies in modern history. Over in the West, he is widely celebrated as a peacemaking hero. I mean, he literally won the Nobel Peace Prize for ending the Cold War without firing a single shot. But inside Russia, the view is drastically different. There, he's heavily criticized by many as a naive leader who squandered their massive superpower status and ushered in an entire era of domestic humiliation.
In his final decades, he mostly remained an impartial statesman. He was critical of domestic democratic rollbacks, specifically calling out Vladimir Putin's extended terms in office. But to be fair, he also maintained that the West broke tacit promises regarding the rapid expansion of NATO into Eastern Europe. Interestingly, he remained strictly neutral on the annexation of Crimea, viewing it fundamentally as a historical part of Russia.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final, slightly provocative thought regarding the man who accidentally ended an empire. Was Mikhail Gorbachev simply naive to think he could safely restructure a rigid authoritarian state without causing its total collapse? Or, if he had just been given a little more time, could a reformed, democratic version of the Soviet system have actually prospered? Let that sink in for a bit, and always keep questioning the history that shaped our world.